people will be able to access that there. So anyways, Valerie and Sia, you have the table.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, everyone, for coming today to hear a little bit about the work we've been doing. My name is Valerie Burseth. I, for the last year, was working with Oregon Sea Grant as an extension specialist in human dimensions of coastal systems. And through that work, met a lot of the people who are in the room today, who have helped inform this work throughout. I'm joined by Sia Agarwal at UC Berkeley, who has been the undergraduate student who has been doing most of the heavy lifting for this project. We were very fortunate to get some funding through the National Sea Grant Community Engaged Internship. And the goal of that internship is to provide opportunities for students to work with communities on co-designed projects. So we'll be sharing some of the results from what we've been doing on this project today. I'm going to give a little bit of an intro to the project and give you some of the kind of high-level trends that we have seen in the data that we looked at. And then I'm going to turn it over to Sia to talk about some of the more detailed reading of different themes that we looked at. So a little bit of background on this project. We've been looking at local action plans along the coast in Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. And I am going to start off with a land and waters acknowledgement. So our team spans many different Indigenous territories, as does our research. So I'm calling today from the territory of the Huron-Wendat, Seneca. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit of background noise. I think. Oh, hi, Casey. Do you mind muting?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Okay.
No problem.
Gotcha.
Great to see you. I'm glad you could join. So yeah, I wanted to acknowledge that I'm calling today from the territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, the Mississaugas of the Credit. I'm currently in Toronto, Ontario, in Canada, and Sia is joining today from Ohlone Territory in Berkeley, California. And our work that we're going to talk about today covers a large range of the Pacific Northwest, which is home to many Indigenous communities who have important ties to the coast. And so we recognize that the work we're talking about today, supporting community resilience to environmental change, is inseparable from the historical events that shape our relationships and our obligations to each other and to the lands, waters, and beings in all of these places. So we're really eager to connect with anyone who works in a tribal capacity to talk about how we can do this work in a meaningful way. So like I said, this project has been focused on local action plans in coastal communities. And I said earlier that everything stems from Marianne, which is very true. This came out of discussions with the Lincoln County Public Health and Climate Group, talking about some of the challenges in understanding what kinds of resilience actions are happening across the coast. And action plans, what we might refer to interchangeably as coastal action plans or CAPs, are growing as a tool for local and regional governments to respond to environmental threats such as sea level rise, wildfires, flooding, and ocean acidification. And these plans are kind of a structured framework that often articulates a vision that communities have for the future that they want, and then what actions they will take to get there. So through discussion with several people, including Martin, Tom, Mike, and many others, we set out to understand generally where and how our coastal action plans implemented and what actions and strategies do they contain. So the idea is that through looking at these plans, communities that may not yet have plans might want to learn from other places where there are plans that have been developed to try and understand, what are some of the components that go into these that might work for their communities. And there's also something to be gained through looking around and seeing where are there opportunities to build some collaborations with maybe neighboring communities that have plans, but haven't kind of bridged them together in more of a regional coordination. So we're kind of hoping to address those things, although, there's always the ambition and then how do we get there? So in this project, we had 4 objectives. The first was to map out coastal action plans across Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. This started out very much as an Oregon focus and expanded to these other regions because we wanted to know, we weren't seeing a lot in Oregon. So what kind of lessons can we learn from how planning has been done in neighboring states? And our aim wasn't just to understand where these plans are, but also what are their key components and what are some of the similarities and differences that we can see between plans across different jurisdictions and states. And ultimately compiling what we've learned into a toolkit or a collection of resources that can be helpful, hopefully, to local communities and other jurisdictions involved in planning. One of the reasons that we focused on coastal plans is because, as with all projects, we had a limited, finite amount of time and resources. So we needed to have some kind of way to control the scope of this. But really, it's also because communities along the stretch of the Pacific coast face many shared environmental changes, threats, as well as maybe similar challenges in governance and planning capacity. And they also share historical cultural connections and regional histories. So there's value in looking at the coast as a particular place for planning. And as I mentioned, this project was also informed by a lot of partners who are in coastal communities. And so that was helpful in shaping the project throughout. And there are some really fantastic resources that exist who do similar work, which has actually been helpful in informing what we've done. So there are some maps that locate where plans exist in Washington and in California. One of the challenges that we found in consulting these maps was just that they are really fantastic for tracking where things are happening, but they don't go into the plans to look at what is inside of them and what can we see. So there are other toolkits and guidance that have been put together by jurisdictions, such as the King County Toolkit is a really fantastic resource that draws on a lot of lessons learned and provides very specific guidance for counties in putting together a similar plan to King County's. So ours kind of builds on this and hopes to kind of contribute to this array of resources that support communities by looking across a large region of the coast and looking deeply into what is contained in these plans. And we identified plans through as comprehensive as we could be, looking through government websites and outreach. And our screening was based on topical relevance. So is it a plan that focuses on community resilience to environmental change? We know for sure that there is a lot of work that is done in related areas of planning, such as coastal hazard plans. We, again, had to keep it somewhat relatively scoped. So we know that there's a lot that we're not capturing in this, but it's definitely a start. We also filtered for geographic scope and as well as availability. So it had to be available to us and as current as we could identify. And then we moved through 3 stages of analysis. So first, we recorded key data on plans, so essentially the who, what, where. And then we went through a deeper reading of the plans and coded for key themes that were of interest to us and our community partners, such as how do they talk about health, how do they talk about human rights, and how do they talk about engagement with different communities. And we brought that all together to look at trends and patterns that we can see, as well as where might there be some gaps in coastal planning for environmental change. Ultimately, our set of plans is 70 coastal resilience plans across 59 cities, tribes, and counties, and across the 3 states. So we specifically included tribal action plans to support non-tribal jurisdictions in advancing inclusive planning practices. So we know that tribes are leaders in community resilience planning, but they've reported several barriers, including sometimes misunderstandings, lack of coordination between non-tribal jurisdictions, and some differences in fundamental values or interpretations of concepts like what health means. So in including tribal plans in this study, we wanted to understand where and how tribal knowledge and plans are represented in planning documents, and to better understand the unique priorities that they articulate, with the goal of supporting awareness and collaboration. But our aim is not to provide recommendations to tribes on how they should engage in planning. It's more to understand where are there opportunities for better understanding what tribal planning looks like. So we won't talk in great detail about all of this. I've covered a lot of different topics. There's a lot of questions that we still can answer with the data that we have. But what I'll do is just kind of give you a picture of where we're hoping to go with the output. So I mentioned that our goal is to put together a toolkit. So the toolkit will contain a data set with downloadable copies of all of the plans that we looked at in the study, with the idea that this can be a resource for others to access. Sia can definitely attest to the amount of time and effort that it takes to search through many different websites, follow up on broken links, and track things down. So hopefully this might save some people some work. The toolkit would also contain a searchable database with the data that we extracted. So I mentioned the who, what, where of these plans. And it would have the ability to filter by specific plans. So for example, if you were only interested in plans at a municipal level, or plans where they did include some kind of youth engagement, or if you wanted to search by specific terms, such as sea level rise. Third, the toolkit contains a report with a summary of our findings. So we have a draft that we're working on right now to finalize, and this contains both detail on what the plans contain, but also it contains some deeper dives into case studies and examples of unique or innovative actions that are being taken. And the last component in the toolkit is a resource list. So one of the things that we know and encountered regularly throughout this is that there are a lot of resources out there that may have been developed outside of the Pacific Northwest, but may contain valuable information on coastal planning from other parts of the world. Or at different scales, so international scales, for example. So as we went through this, we compiled a list of resources that can also be filtered for particular types. Maybe you're looking for data sets that exist on a particular topic. So those are here. Maybe you're looking for similar toolkits in other communities, and maybe you're looking for specific topics. So the idea is that the resource list just kind of compiles a lot of this valuable information that exists out there. So that's the toolkit. The plan for the toolkit is that it will be publicly available and shared on OSU Scholars Archive. And please feel free to reach out to me at any point if you have questions or want to follow up on any of the details here. So now I'm going to share a little bit about what we've learned. So first, just an overview to give a sense of some of the major trends. We found that over time, we see this general increase in action plans being developed across all states. We saw Washington as an early leader in this. All of the planning kind of started around the same time from what we could find around 2006. But Washington really was early and pretty consistent in developing plans, concentrated around the Puget Sound for the most part, which makes sense based on population. And Washington had a strong representation across different types of jurisdictions, so driven largely by municipalities, tribes, and counties. Oregon started later. We've seen a notable increase, a steady production of plans since 2019. And from what we could find, there was definitely a focus on counties as the source of plans, um, and just a few municipalities. And we were only able to find one tribal plan, but we know that that may reflect just limitations in our search process. So we'd be really interested in hearing from people if they know of plans that we should consider. And then California also began early and had a very significant spike in 2022, and overall was largely driven by municipalities, but also had county representation up and down Northern California. So when we look at the different strategic areas that plans focus on, we found that plans were quite balanced across strategic actions that focused on adaptation to environmental change, as well as mitigation of environmental change, and then plans that fell kind of at the center, or strategies that fell at the center that address both adaptation and mitigation. And in the report, we have more detail on each of these, but for now, I'm just giving a kind of high-level overview here. When we break it down by the different strategic areas, we found that actions that contribute to both adaptation and mitigation, so specifically resilient infrastructure and resilient ecosystems, were highly represented across all states, which suggests that there is a priority on strategies that simultaneously deal with adapting to risks and also mitigating future impacts. And we did notice a couple of differences by state, but overall we found that there was largely similar patterns. But in Washington, they placed the highest emphasis of all the states on sustainable transportation. Oregon plans most often focused on resilient ecosystems and infrastructure. And Oregon was the only state where we noticed that resilient economies ranked in its top priorities. And California, Northern California, had the highest concern for drought and water security. But overall, the balance across these strategic areas showed some similar priorities. Something else that we've had a lot of people ask throughout this process is, okay, a plan is great, but how is it implemented? Are these plans implemented? And so we found that overall, most plans indicated some kind of progress. We found that the most common way that plans address this question of implementation was by describing projects or actions that are already underway. And a challenge that we noted was that still nearly half of the plans gave no information about whether they were being implemented beyond adoption by a governing body. So there is some gap in trying to understand the degree to which these plans are implemented. We found that the strongest plans included very concrete tracking systems to evaluate progress. So for example, Clatsop County reports in terms of percentages on how complete their actions are. Bainbridge Island gave really detailed summaries of the actions that they've been taking. And the North Olympic Peninsula has an interactive adaptation dashboard. And I've included a link here, but it's interesting to see examples where jurisdictions are taking advantage of different technologies to better connect the public to understand what kinds of actions are being taken. Another question about implementation is whether or not there are resources to do so. So we found that while most plans indicated some kind of potential funding, only 23% of plans overall indicated that funding has already been secured. This somewhat makes sense given that we're looking at plans that are forward-looking, but it definitely reflects a challenge in developing actions without an existing funding structure to support it. And so a future stage of this work would look more into some of the details behind the scenes about how these actions have been supported and where some of the challenges lie for jurisdictions looking for funding. So what we found when we looked at the specific sources of funding that plans identified, we found the strongest representation was through higher level government grants at the state and federal level. And these funds are clearly very valuable sources for coastal planning, but they can face challenges such as being temporally limited or tied to very specific projects. And we found far less reliance on more stable local options, such as identifying new local revenue streams, parking fees, for example, or tourist taxes to support action plans, or revolving loan funds. So we see potentially a disparity here between this need for long-term sustained action and reliance on short-term funding that can potentially create a problem for jurisdictions. So we also wanted to look at whether there's anyone assigned to oversee the plan and its implementation. We found that most plans, so 62% of plans overall, identified a group or individual responsible for oversight. This was primarily government departments, which you can see in the yellow portion of the donut chart, or a dedicated staff member that was named. So, for example, Santa Cruz names their sustainability and climate action manager. We found overall that the leadership roles described varied widely between being permanent or temporary, whether they had resources to fund the position or whether the actions were simply added to existing workloads. So again, even though there may be somebody named, it's difficult to tell from just reading the plans the degree to which those individuals have all the tools that they need to carry out the work. Some of the examples that we found of places where there are dedicated resources were, for example, Whatcom County, which proposed creating a specific office of climate action that would be led by a climate action manager. So in a dedicated role with clear accountability and sustained funding. And Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative is a unique example where they have a collection of full-time staff from 4 jurisdictions that are formalized through a regional agreement to support regional collaboration. So these were some interesting examples. And I'm going to turn it now to Sia to talk about engagement.
Yeah, Thanks, Valerie. Hi, everyone. I'm Sia. I am from Berkeley, and I've been interning with Valerie under her great mentorship this summer. And I'm really excited to share our findings on engagement and other themes from this review. So, a common element of community resilience planning involves establishing what shared values and principles should guide actions. And we found wide variation in how plans sought to ensure that their strategies address the needs of all community members, including tribal communities. So, here I'm going to share our findings on the themes of youth, elderly engagement, tribal involvement, health, and human rights. So, starting off with youth. Many of the impacts that Valerie has described and then we reviewed in plans are expected to intensify over time, um, bringing youth into this difficult situation where they are left out of decision-making pathways, investments, advisory boards, but they are inheriting a problem that they had a smaller part in creating. That being said, just over half of plans included youth. There was a wide range of pathways for engaging youth in decision making by bringing them onto boards and committees, providing paid internship opportunities, directly involving them in resilience strategies, and conducting outreach in youth spaces such as schools and community-based organizations. We found that Northern California had the highest percentage of youth engagement, and yeah, we can go over a few examples. So in Monterey County, they formed a Youth Climate Action Council to meet regularly that provides input on their county's CAP development. Similarly, the Puyallup Tribal Youth Council convenes to design greenhouse gas reduction and climate strategies that will reflect the needs and concerns of tribal youth. Humboldt County wants to make sure that younger students are also involved in CAP development. So they go out to K through 12 schools and put on presentations in school assemblies to educate young students on their CAP development. And finally, the city of Half Moon Bay has been hiring youth energy specialists through a partnership with Climate Careers Program in order to develop the workforce necessary to implement the strategies that they'd like to see in their community. But yeah, overall, the highest representation of youth engagement was through outreach and advisory roles, with less emphasis on internship, employment, and project opportunities. And overall, we find that plans show a growing awareness to include youth, but this is limited to a small number of standout examples. Okay, next is senior engagement. Across the three states, coastal resilience strategies focus less on engaging senior communities or giving them decision-making power. This community is often left out of relationship building in coastal resilience planning at the government level. The exception is amongst tribal plans. We found that tribal elders are often a source of traditional knowledge. Their memories and accounts of environmental change inform adaptation planning. But as you can see, when we look at both non-tribal and tribal plans, seniors are only contributors in 9% of the plans. They are only part of targeted outreach in 14%. And the reason that you see the percentages on the left are so high is because they are most often recognized as a vulnerable group, but we know they can be so much more than that. Giving them a seat at the table will help us like get more comprehensive participation. Some good examples, like I said, come from tribal plans, but also Half Moon Bay collaborated with Senior Co-Siders, a local community-based organization, to incorporate seniors in their CAP planning process from the beginning. I also want to talk about in tribal plans how they had intergenerational action, basically by connecting their youth to their elders, encouraging them to seek their wisdom, and thus building community resilience to coastal impacts. I'd like to highlight three tribal plans that talked about this. First is the Swinomish tribe in Washington. They encourage elders and youth to work together to document environmental changes. Also in Washington, the Shoalwater Bay Tribe, they are encouraging youth, or they're having youth plant community gardens to provide a source of traditional food for their elders. And in California, the Yurok tribe, they are hosting workshops where older and young women can come together and engage in traditional practices such as basket weaving. And overall, we find that while recognition is a start, jurisdictions could conduct more outreach and give more purposeful representation to their senior communities. Okay. Moving on to tribal representation in non-tribal plans. Of course, we found a lot of tribal-led planning, but for the sake of tribal representation, we just looked at non-tribal plans. So we found less than half of plans across the three states incorporated tribal representation, but there is a growing commitment to direct representation of tribes in developing or implementing resilience actions. Some ways that tribes were represented were, let's look at Whatcom County. They consulted the Nooksack Indian tribes adaptation plan to inform their own strategies. Trinidad in California held resilience town halls to create dialogue between local government and tribes. And representatives from the Yurok tribe and the Elk Valley Rancheria serve on the technical advisory board of the Del Norte County, primarily advising on transportation operations. And we found that tribes are also directly involved in resilience strategies. For example, King County in Washington partnered with local tribes to remove salmon passage barriers and plant vegetation along salmon recovery corridors. They recognize that salmon is an important cultural, natural resource for their local tribes, and hence their emphasis on this strategy. And then the Coos County and the Coquille Indian tribe built a hybrid use system of Winter Lake, creating agricultural and coho salmon co-benefits, showing that both jurisdictions and tribals' environmental priorities can be met with collaboration. There is a growing recognition that tribes should be involved in coastal planning, and more coordinated planning can stem from strong tribal partnerships. Next, we sought to see where Indigenous ways of knowing were included in plans. This includes traditional ecological knowledge and how traditional practices were being recognized in plans. Coastal action plans are increasingly calling for the inclusion of Indigenous science, sometimes along with Western science, honoring tribes' historic relationship to lands and waters. We found that non-tribal governments included Indigenous ways of knowing, centering around key species and ecosystems. So, like I said before, salmon is very important. A lot of plans also talked about shellfish and wetland restoration. Some examples also come from Coos County in Oregon. Their estuary resilience program was guided by the Coquille Indian tribe's assessment of coho salmon populations. And in California, Sonoma County would like to expand opportunities for tribes to implement their traditional land practices in their counties. Um, like I said before, elders are often a source of traditional knowledge, and this is reflected in the quote from the Yurok tribe that is on the screen. But all this being said, Indigenous knowledge should be protected and treated appropriately. This is stressed by tribal plans to prevent misappropriation of their knowledge. And some knowledge tribes feel comfortable reporting, such as shellfish activities. This is coming directly from the Lummi Nation, while other piece of knowledge they would like to protect and guard more carefully. Yeah. We also looked at health. We looked at three facets of health: physical health, mental health and wellness, and holistic health. And we found that key concerns were extreme heat, wildfires, and poor air quality, leading to respiratory illnesses, heat stroke, and heat exhaustion. Plans are also concerned with the impacts from ocean warming, harmful algal blooms, and storms. This may lead to disease from contaminated water, food poisoning, and restricted access to traditional foods, thus diminishing cultural health and stability. Some examples come from Lane County. Lane County plans to roll out an HVAC retrofit program and public awareness campaigns to combat the risks from wildfire smoke and air pollution. To tackle mental health problems, Sonoma County will plant urban forests to provide wellness benefits such as carbon sequestration, cooling effects to combat the intensity of urban heat islands. And then we also wanted to look at holistic health. Holistic health was um, a concept that we saw in county plans as well as tribal plans, and this hinges on recognizing that human health and ecosystem health are intertwined. Um, an example that I have here is from the Yurok tribe, and they report that upholding traditional values and engaging in customs that will foster cultural health um, will be beneficial for all their tribal community members. Finally, we looked at human rights. We see a lack of recognition of human rights across plans. The percentages are pretty similar across Washington, Oregon, and California. But some standout examples are here. We looked at Lincoln County and how they're aligning strategies with the 2019 Human Rights Report. King County in Washington will prioritize ethically sourced materials for EV batteries, and they'll advocate for rights of supply chain workers through federal and state regulations. The Coquel Indian Tribe protects the right to a healthy environment and clean air for its community members. And San Francisco emphasizes the impact of environmental change on persons with disabilities, hoping to address the disproportionate lack of access to emergency services. Yeah, so across these themes and these guiding principles, we found that coastal resilience plans are highly varied across states in distribution and implementation, but they share common priorities for action areas. Washington shows robust plans, Oregon is an emerging state, and California has a bimodal distribution indicating a divide between minimal and ambitious efforts. But common priorities are solving for water-related impacts as expected for coastal communities. They also split their focus evenly between adaptation and mitigation actions centered in resilient infrastructure and resilient ecosystems. Next, we'd like to highlight that many jurisdictions lack specific implementation goals or plans, leaving plans vulnerable to becoming static documents. Like Valerie mentioned before, nearly half of plans provide no information on implementation, but many plans identify a leader, but these positions are often temporary or part of an ad hoc committee. This lack of clear resource leadership hinders accountability and long-term success. So there's opportunity to bring more like passionate people into coastal action planning by giving them a sustained long-term position to coordinate coastal action plans. Finally, we'd like to touch on community engagement, plans showing a growing awareness of the need to engage youth and elders, but this is limited to a small number of examples. While plans use of various tools for public input, the most effective strategy involves active collaboration with community leaders and leveraging regional knowledge. This leads us to our key recommendations. First, we recommend that plans establish concrete implementation plans by providing a resource leadership position to oversee the implementation of each plan. Plans should include a concrete timeline, specific targets, and a method for tracking their progress, such as a website or an interactive dashboard. Plans could also publish frequent progress reports to keep stakeholders and the public in the loop. Next, we recommend the formalization of tribal partnerships. We advise planners to move beyond land acknowledgements and to explicitly connect community resilience to upholding Indigenous rights and tribal sovereignty. We encourage plans to seek out meaningful partnerships between tribal and non-tribal jurisdictions, including entering into co-management agreements, establishing permanent tribal seats on planning committees, and dedicating funding streams for tribal-led projects. Like I said, we'd also recommend leveraging regional knowledge. There's a lot of expertise in community members' experience um, as like this project has shown us. So we encourage learning from communities, and this can be formalized by establishing a multi-state knowledge sharing collaborative to learn from each local jurisdiction's strengths, challenges, and strategies for navigating the complex field of the planning process. And we encourage the use of this toolkit to identify and cultivate connections between communities that have similar needs and profiles. Finally, we recommend investing in audience-specific community engagement. This means tailoring outreach strategies to the desired audience. For example, this can mean creating paid internship for youth, developing culturally appropriate engagement with elders, and partnering with community-based organizations that work with underserved population. We saw a lot of innovative tools being used to connect with people that are often left out of planning processes, such as vision boarding, online open houses, social media campaigns. So perhaps jurisdictions can be inspired by the diversity of tools that are being used out there. And finally, outreach materials should be multilingual to ensure that participation is not limited by English speaking ability.
Thanks, Sia. And we're going to end with grateful acknowledgement of the many people who have provided input into this process so far, as well as funding from National Sea Grant through the Community Engaged Internship Program. And a big thank you to David Irvin and everyone at the Gwynn Library for hosting the in-person portion of today. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and take questions as soon as I can figure out how to do so. There we go. And I saw that there were some things coming in the chat, but I couldn't open those. So excellent. I'll catch up with Megan and Kim later. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. I see lots of digital hands.
Good,
Kate.
great, yeah, great report. I'm sort of getting feedback, but probably most people blocked out 1 hour for this meeting, so we'll take a couple of questions and then wrap up at 11 o'clock. So Kate, you're up first.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for the presentation, and then just fully introduce what Kara and I do, so that it's a little bit easier. And sorry, I'm not on video. It's informal Friday. So Kara is a Coquille Indian Tribe Tribal Resilience Specialist. So I feel like this is extremely topical for her area of expertise. And then I support both the resilience part of the organization and land use planning. And so I wanted to just acknowledge that if you have anything where you'd like to reach out to the Coquille tribe where it comes to land use planning or resilience, you're welcome to reach out to either of us as like a first point of contact, and we can get you in touch with the right person, or it might be us. The only thing I wanted to clarify that we are not the right person for formal consultation, as our manager says, with a big C. It is like government to government consultation. So the other thing is I wanted to just say thank you for calling out. The Coquille tribe does a lot of great work. One of the things that we did this year, which some of the folks on the call know, like DEQ, I think knows this, but the Cocoa Tribe released a public-facing resilience management plan this year, and so Kara was a big part of that. But there's also a resilience task force led by tribal members, and we had grants that helped us hire some consultants that were incredible that supported that effort. So I just want to say that was led by tribal members and tribal leadership and some subject matter experts. And I'm going to put that link in the chat so that you can read that full report. But thank you so much for this. It was really helpful.
Thank you so much, Kate and Kara, for being here. I absolutely will be following up with you after, and thank you so much for offering to be a good point of connection. Yes, the Coquel Resilience Management Plan is the one plan that we have included in Oregon for a tribal plan. And yeah, I would love to follow up more and talk to you about that.
Thank you.
So I think Mike, you're up next.
Yes, Valerie and Sia, excellent presentation. I really enjoyed it. It's very thorough. I follow-up question though, how will this be actually distributed to the various governments, entities, as well, and in this case, because I represent the statewide Elders Climate Action Oregon as one of the leaders with Tom and Martin, et cetera. So how would that get out to the public, and how can we as groups like Elders Climate Action share this information and use it for our own advocacy and promotion of climate action plans?
Thank you, Mike. It's a great question, and something that has been true throughout this project is that our network is full of really amazing connected people who have made some of those connections for us already. So as soon as we have the published resource available, we'll be sharing it out through Oregon Sea Grant, through all of our connections that we have, and we would be very grateful if you could share it out as well within your networks. And we've been in touch with many different agencies in Oregon, but we also need to do more to connect outside of Oregon to Washington and California. So we'll be sharing there. We've also presented the project to the Pacific Northwest Tribal Climate Change Network and have made some great connections through there. So we'll be sharing out there as well. But yeah, anything that we have, the goal is to make this useful for other people.
And one follow-up, will Sia and you be available for future presentations of this sort? I know that you're already online to come to Florence and the Environmental Management Advisory Committee.
Yes, definitely. The project really, it's a lot of data, and there's a lot to do with it and say about it. And we're really interested in the questions that people have that they want to ask about the data. So please feel free to get in touch with me afterwards if there are things that you want to know that we can answer. So absolutely, there will be future efforts on this. And Sia has kindly expressed enthusiasm for continuing to work on this. The next stage that we're hoping to do is, like I said, to reach out to people involved in planning work. So there will be future information for you on that as well. One sec,
So I'm going to
someone's
let our Commissioner Miller sort of ask the last question because we are approaching 11 o'clock, and I know all you folks are quite busy. So Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, thanks everyone. Just wanted to understand, Valerie, will there be a landing page, a link to this video so I can, again, are you going to follow up? Should we email? How do we get this? This has been great. Good stuff.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you, Casey. As I understand, Jack was sharing at the beginning that there will be a link to the video that can be shared. And then we we've circulated a draft of our report to our community partners, and we're getting feedback on that. So the resources will be published in the future, and there will be a link to that you'll get as well that you can share out. So the video link will probably come first, and then the resources link will come second.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Yeah, so Commissioner Miller, as Valerie's describing, I have a personal YouTube account that I'll be uploading this, and our AI overlord has been faithfully recording this, and so I'll edit its its summary, and then I'll send that out. I have a list that Marianne assembled of about 50 people, and I'll send that out, and so then people can obviously send that out to other people.
Yeah. Thank you. Excellent.
So anyways, it is 11 o'clock, and I tend to like to stop meetings, right at the time that we had set aside. So I really want to thank everybody for showing up, and particularly want to thank Valerie and Sia for giving an excellent presentation. And have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you all so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah. See everyone.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Um,
Well
might
done.
be too late. Do you know how you do that?
Hi there, Tom.
Yeah.
Tom, are
Yeah.
you still?
Do you have tech
still on?
support there, Martin?
A little back and forth. Hey, Tom, just a quick question. Have you started your classes yet at the community college? Oh, you're still on mute.
Yeah. What are you teaching, Tom?
Oh, it's a course on climate and youth and human rights with some suggestions for what local governments can do.
How do we tap into that?
It's through the Oregon Coast Community College.
Will it be on the
It's a Zoom.
syllabus? Oh, Zoom. Okay. So just
Yeah.
look at the class schedule and we can get signed up for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, good, good. That once you get that, please share that with me, Tom.
Yeah.
I'd like to see this thing duplicated because I could offer this at our Lane Community
Do you have
College
dates yet, or?
if you could mentor me on the whole process, and we could
Are
do
you
it.
planning to register for it?
I'd like to. I'd like to.
$30.
I'd like to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When's
Good.
when's the first class, Tom?
October 1st,
October 1st. Okay.
my son's birthday.
Oh, cool.
Okay. Yeah, we should definitely get that into the network so people know.
Well, thank you. And Martin, really great job for pulling this all together. I'm glad.
Mhm.
We need more opportunities to. I know that the climate Road Climate wants to have a presentation as well, and they will be coming to Florence in the January-February timeframe. Then we'll have the actual report itself. Commissioner Miller, we're part of the team that helped advise this whole thing, Tom and I and Martin. And what we've been privileged to see is the draft of the actual report, minus the full toolkit, but it's really going to be good. It's really full of they did a wonderful job in summarizing, I can tell you that.
Well,
Yeah.
this is so great, you guys, because I think whereas I, would love to see more action going on, but it gives us, an awareness of, where we're at. And I think that's real important as we're advocating. We, yes, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but at least now we can get a feel. And it's kind of filling in those holes to me. So, I want the other commissioners to see this, and I think broadly to the community. I think there's a lot of desire to participate. There's a sense that people want to contribute, and so that's really encouraging. And to see where it is, where we can find it. Hey, do you think Valerie has had real substantive communication
Oops, she
We missed the
froze.
last
with the
part.
Siletz tribe? Because we had our
Oh,
joint
yeah,
session.
yeah.
The Siletz tribe, because we had a canceled joint session with the tribe. I had this on my list of things to talk about to the Siletz tribal members. So I'm just wondering if she's had any inroads yet, and would certainly love to help her out. You know, connect her to the general manager, connect her to the chair of tribal council. Whatever it takes. I know we've
Right.
put out invitations to them, but it's something I think it would be good for us to follow up on, and
Definitely. That
keep
that
at it.
that's yeah, that was partly why I was asking about future stuff, because this is just a start. We have the same
Okay.
question about interactions with our confederated tribes, including our Siaslo
Okay.
here in Florence, as an example. One question though is this: they both brought out the fact that what one community does might influence the adjacent communities. So
Mm,
what I'm really,
yeah.
really eager to see is for Lincoln City to ultimately get their climate action plan, which they put so much work into, adopted. And I know it's been a hard struggle for them because they are still, I don't know where they're at with the city manager. Or,
Yes, I got a little bit of an update for you. Let me just
oh,
tell you,
good.
I talked to Susan Walke Tuesday or Wednesday, and she said yes, they haven't brought it for final resolution. And I know she wanted to get through that before she met with Martin and I or anyone. I think that is kind of the missing action that needs to be done. She didn't seem, she seemed optimistic, but you're right. They're in this transition where apparently right now their interim, they had their police chief for a while as their interim
I heard that.
administrator, and now it's their attorney. So maybe they're bottlenecked up. Uh,
Yeah.
but my sense is they're very close to doing that, and that is, we just need more. It's like, okay, see, others are doing this.
Yeah. Well, the city manager, they have
And it'd
no
be really
one,
helpful. So I'll
they haven't
definitely
hired
keep
one.
tabs on that too.
Good, good. That'd be helpful
No,
because how close are they getting a new city manager in place?
I didn't point blank ask that,
Yeah,
um, Michael, but I think they've been trying, just like us. I mean, we're
yeah,
now going to try a kind of a headhunting service, to just see if we can, get some leads.
yeah.
Um,
For them. Yeah. But that would be a really plus, and something that we can share up and down the coast once they get that in place.
well, yeah,
There, oops, you
as
broke
we
up
were
there.
going through the presentation today, oh, I was looking at Benton County's sustainability coordinator position. Uh,
Mm,
and when you look at that job description, you can see how that must help them stay going, keeping that
yeah, yeah,
momentum,
yeah.
right? And that's where an administrator can be helpful too as well, and just kind of keeping that momentum.
Mhm.
But really, too, what you guys are doing is so important to, you know, remind your elected officials this is a priority for the community. And yeah, we need to take ownership inside our organizations for sure, but it helps a lot. So don't give up.
No, we've been in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
Although we don't have that much time left. Easy.
Well,
We're up there. I feel young at heart and all that, but uh,
yeah, and
well,
we've
thanks for
got
the
some.
encouraging word for us elders. But I've been trying to encourage them also to look at the what they are called the midlifers, the ones in
Mm,
between us youth and the ones that are so busy with their careers, but they're raising their
mm,
families, and they're the ones that really can have an influence on their own young people as well. And I'll be going to a conference that's going to be held by Sage in Portland that's going to experiment with future design concepts that came out of Japan. But the thing is that it's going to have all three elements of the intergenerational. And I plan to go. I'll share that with you guys once it's done in October. But they're collaborating with the Elders Climate Group down in Northern California that already piloted doing this.
Yeah, great. Yeah, even little things that give somebody some agency and hope,
Right, exactly.
How we're living at home and how that is our kids and our households, so
agree.
important.
Yeah. Well, we
Well,
all
let me
can
know how
share
I can
from
help.
what.
Thanks again,
Yeah.
everyone.
All right. Good. I'm glad you joined us. Thank you.
Okay. Right. See ya.
And
Bye-bye.
thank you, Suzanne. We've had some good representation from Florence, and Suzanne's a mover and a shaker, and she's been supportive of all that we've been doing for the last several. By the way, I could, if you can get more of those little handouts, those little packets people really enjoy those. Thanks, Susan. Tom, thank you. I'll check with you again on your class for sure. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
You too.